Welcome to another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. Friends, my name is Mark Gutrovsky. I'm here with Sergey Gutrovsky. This is going to be a very brief podcast episode because we're both, this week is just kind of all over the place. I'm leaving out of town.
Yeah.
You know, the amount of meetings that we've been having has also gone up, which, who knows, maybe there'll be some.
We've probably our meeting times went up by 5x this month.
Yeah.
At least.
For maybe some good reasons, which might be disclosed soon, depending how things go. But yeah, so as we always start the pod with pouring some batchy, let's pour some batchy, and then we'll get right into it. So. Some batchy to kick off the pod.
Good times. I saw someone commented on my shoes.
It's true.
It's working, dude.
The last podcast episode on we just got so much feedback on YouTube. So thank you to everyone who commented and shared something.
Yeah.
It's honestly spurred so many thoughts and ideas from me. I cannot stop rereading the comments and thinking and it's brought a lot of ideas because I'm like, it feels like a lot of the stuff that people have mentioned is like the big elephant in the room that nobody wants to address or think about. You know what I mean?
No, 100%.
And I'm like, why? Yeah. Like, maybe I was just ignorant for so long and maybe never thought about this because I just wasn't in that headspace, or I don't know. But I'm like, why aren't cafes seeing this, or why is this such a common thing? And usually oftentimes it's like, if there's a problem, that means there's just an opportunity that needs to be solved, and sooner or later somebody will solve it, or you know. I
mean, that goes with, in the last episode we discussed the fact that little poll that I did that had a decent size of feedback, that 100 people voting, and it put a lot of things in perspective. Again, it's super, like, market research is crucial for anything you do. And not like, I think a lot of the times people talk about market research before they open a business. It's fun to be able to do this market research when we're in year 5. You know, and I would highly suggest anyone owning a business, any form of business, I don't care if you're selling baseball cards, you should be doing market research regularly.
100%.
It's not just one and done kind of thing. You should be on top of it.
And 100%, I would say doing that really, really, like, to an unreal magnitude before you start is crucial. Like, and that's one thing that I think I would say I wish we did more of. Not that we didn't do any. It's just we could have done way better, which would kind of, I think, push us down the line a little bit. But if you own a roasting company and you're curious about starting a roasting company, actually, we dropped a video like last week. It's just me ranting for 9 minutes to the camera about a few main things that are worth tackling before you begin. So
batch is good. This is Jorge Mendes. Brewed 2 cups of it this morning. It tastes exactly the same. Solid.
Nice.
Yeah, it's good.
What are you getting flavor notes?
Orange for sure. Has nice, like, citrus, stone fruit. I don't know if it's like green grape, like a lot of green grape.
Yeah, green grape for sure.
A lot, and it's nice.
Or like a Granny Smith apple.
Yeah, it's a little sweeter. It's less tart.
More great green grape for sure.
It's like biting into a nice green grape.
Yeah.
Like, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I would just leave that green grape. I'm not going to exaggerate and say that it kind of tastes like winey. It doesn't, but it kind of, that tart crispiness on it. Yeah. But it's coated in nice sweetness too. Like, it's not just a one-sided.
I think it has a little bit of like graham crack. I keep getting like graham cracker, almond, maybe a little bit of honey,
like marshmallow s'more kind of thing going on.
If you're, I think this coffee does really well as a batch brew coffee really well as an espresso coffee, espresso and milk. This is what most people are pouring in their cafes or their coffee carts on milk. And it cuts through very nicely, even though, it just cuts through very nicely. So great option. I wouldn't recommend this as like a wild filter coffee. I don't think that's the thing that's the spot that it fills, but
it's also very easy to brew. Like, I think it's a very universal coffee. So, and that's because of its profile it's fairly tame. You know, I'm not going to, like you said, it's not like obnoxious there.
Yeah.
Is it like empty of flavor and just super round? No, it's definitely not that.
Right.
It still has very nice acidity, very good composition. It's structured well. Like, I still like this coffee, you know.
Well, let's get into this since this is a shortened episode. I know all the Reddit forums and the Facebook forums have been going nuts over the tariffs that were enacted by by the president, and it's interesting to see that people drinking coffee at home respond to stuff like this, and people kind of outside the industry, like people who work in the industry, but also interesting to see people who work in the industry but are not in the special, like the specialty grade industry, also get alarmed by this. Because it's a tariff. It's gonna raise prices pretty quickly. And it's simply just about coffee crossing the border, coming in, and all of a sudden it just gets 10% more expensive, 15% more expensive.
Nothing changes about the product. That is, like, you're not paying for more quality, or you're not. None of that changes.
And especially, and going back to actually the video that I posted like a week ago about this, what makes fighting on price points so hard, because a 10%, 20% increase of tariffs, all of a sudden the people who are fighting for the cheapest cup of joe, man, that cup of joe just cannot, you just can't already win, because all of a sudden that just skyrocketed everything. So I don't know, thoughts?
100%. That's similar to our conversation about like minimum wage increasing as well. I think to talk about those two in tandem is very helpful, because no matter what, the barista, the roaster, anyone that was creating the coffee product or the final product, when their wage goes up, nothing actually changes to the product. Like the coffee, if it was always dialed in, it's going to stay dialed in. But it's just going to cost more. And that's the challenge. And the other part of it, I think with the tariff stuff, it's even more complicated, because that also affects the farmer from a sustainability point of view, I think too, because they still have to sell the same amount of coffee, and roasters still need to fulfill demand. And how do you maintain demand by the same amount of coffee, and from a coffee growers and a producer's point of view, sell the same amount of coffee? How do you keep the numbers the same, but change the pricing structure? And I think there's going to be, or there has been already. I think Maxwell Mooney from the consulting. What's the consulting firm again? Oh, just blanking. Sorry, Max, if you're listening. But Maxwell Mooney made this post about the fact that, like, think about the coffee that's being the decaf coffee that's processed in Colombia, or in British Columbia, that's from Colombia. So even that level of processing adds a whole nother layer, because the coffee is not from Canada. It's processed in Canada, but then it's imported into the United States. How do all those tariffs work? And are there,
so if you're, I mean, what Sergi's referring to, if you don't know, is Swiss water decaf process, which is pretty much what I think actually most decaf, if I'm not mistaken, in the North America pretty much go through, I think, just that one plant, if not like
majority.
Majority.
Still majority.
It's crazy. How much that distance that coffee has to go, and it pretty much has to go into one country and then come right back into the US. In addition, as these tariffs were enacted, like the dollar versus the Canadian dollar changed quite a bit.
Right.
It went from being, $1 American is a dollar. It was at like $1.20, 25 Canadian, to it changed quite a bit. Now it's $1 US dollar to $1.47, $1.50.
Oh, wow.
So
that's the lowest I can ever remember.
it's crazy. Yeah. So for folks like us, this is kind of great.
Yeah.
Not to say that we need, not to say it's great, but there are some perks, especially living close to the border. You literally cross the border, you go to a cafe, all of a sudden you're getting almost like a 30-40% discount on everything.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yep.
The flip side, though, it gets more expensive. So there are some interesting logistics here, because if you're a multi-roaster, and I can't take credit for this. This is from, I think, Cole from By the Drip, the podcast. He mentioned this, and I was like, interesting. That if you're a multi-roaster and you buy coffee from a Canadian roaster, green coffee kind of all universally costs the same, is not getting adjusted whether you're in Canada or the US for the most part. But you're getting a huge discount because of the dollar difference.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah. And I've been familiar with that one from the narrative perspective when we buy coffee or have bought coffee from Manhattan. The fluctuation of the dollar discount always, you have to consider that in your pricing structure.
Yeah.
And that's wild on both fronts, is because technically, you can, from a multi-roaster point of view, you can leave the coffee to be the same price and make more money simply because of this political situation.
Yeah.
You can, that's a possibility. So I don't take that or leave it. I don't know if you want to call that, ooh, that's great, or ooh, that sucks, because it depends on, who you are. Kyle Roselle also made a post, something along those lines, and how the dollar fluctuating affects his business and all of that. It's super challenging when we're talking about a product that is so politically dependent. Yeah. It's super challenging. So I don't even know. I mean, that goes down to everything. If you're ordering equipment, you know what I mean? From another country, all of that it's crazy.
Yeah. Another thing I want to add though is also I know, early talks with Kyle and about shipping across the border. Yeah. It's interesting though, on the other side is all the times that we've tried to ship coffees to folks, listeners of the pod that bought our coffee across the border, we've been getting hit with tariffs as well.
Yeah.
We've had people that buy $30, $40, $50 of coffee, and all of a sudden there's $15, $20 of tariffs on top. It's almost a double. That it's always been that way.
Yeah.
Which is the flip side of that. And it sucks because all of a sudden you're like, well, if I cover the cost of those tariffs for the end coffee drinker, dang, that pretty much wipes out all my margin. But then if they're taking it on for themselves, dang, they're paying, that 8-ounce bag becomes steeply expensive for them.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And that's something that we've run into in the past.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It makes it really difficult, where as opposed to, I think from Canada into the US, if, folks like September, Subtext, Luna are shipping, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but the import on coffees going into the US was lower than what we were paying to go into Canada.
Yeah. And
it's just not an easy dance. And now it's kind of tilting the other way. Now they're kind of getting the short end of the stick.
Yeah.
And it sucks. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's a very real thing. Yeah.
It's super challenging. Because again, for us who live so close to the border, I'm even thinking outside of even coffee, like Trader Joe's, for example.
Yeah.
When Trader Joe's, I think the Bellingham Trader Joe's is considered one of the most busiest Trader Joe's in the United States. Imagine how that's going to dictate their sales.
Yeah.
Even thing. Because if they were one of the busiest because of the traffic from up north of the border from Canada into the United States.
Yes.
So imagine how that's going to change everything if now they can't buy the same amount of stuff for the same amount of money that they were willing to spend.
I mean, the cafes up here as well.
Yeah, I was going to follow up with that. Yeah, because and then obviously like the cafes who are dependent on the other day I was working and I think the first 4 people that came in were tourists, literally. Some students up from Vancouver that are from Mexico were driving to Seattle, stopped by, got a cup of coffee. And guess what we talked about most of the time? Where should I go eat?
Yeah.
What should I go do?
Yep.
So that's all economy and that's all money going into your local community, but that's going into the grand scheme of things of the U.S. economy as well. The way you play that, the way you work with that is definitely going to dictate the livelihood of one cafe surviving, closing down. Yeah. Roasteries operating and buying more green coffee or less green coffee.
Yeah.
Which then, that's again, true. The supply chain is not, you can't compartmentalize. It's like if one part of the supply chain, especially in coffee, suffers, the rest of the supply chain is going to suffer.
Yeah. As we land the plane here, I'm going to throw out some predictions. I don't think this is going to last too long. So before we throw like panic attacks and all this stuff, like even especially the one with Canada, I think is going to get figured out pretty soon. I mean, even literally earlier this week, I believe the tariffs have been put on a pause on a 30-day or 90-day delay. So again, that already alleviates some stuff, and I think it's going to get figured out. I really do. I think I believe the tariffs probably from Colombia are also going to get figured out anytime. From Mexico. Those are also, from what last time I checked, and this was literally like a day or two ago, those are going to get figured out. The ones in China might not. Yeah. I think it might get a little worse from there. But then that affects more coffee gear. Yeah. So I don't know what coffee gear is made in China, but I'm assuming a lot of it. Yeah. So that might be a little challenging on the gear side. So
even outside of coffee gear, it's like bags, MT pack. Like a lot of people use MT pack.
That's true.
Especially if you're a high volume roasting company and you're buying like 100,000 bag order, it's or you printed cups, right? For a cafe. It's like a lot of that is gonna change our COGS quite a bit if those retain. So again, you're right. There's quote unquote no need to panic, and hopefully that all of us learn and understand is the fact that our job as people who run businesses is one to communicate really, really well. Yeah. And take responsibility for what we can. If we have to increase pricing somewhere, make sure that we clearly communicate as to why. And then from a consumer point of view, like, I can't sit around and point fingers at people for raising prices. And it's honestly, it's one of those things like that is great about owning a business is that you are more conscious about what you consume. Yeah. Not even saying like more or less. You're more conscious when you see a price increase. You're like, you probably understand why because the back end stuff. And it's very similar to when, before you work in service and hospitality and you go to a place and you, whatever, I'll skim by today and just tip 10%. After you work with tips being a major part of your salary, right? You don't skimp out anymore. Right. You totally get it. And I think that's one of the things, that is beneficial for us as business owners. We still have some form of leverage. We still have some form of control. It just doesn't make our game probably slightly more challenging, of course, but can we make sure that we make corrections, this and that, to be able to still provide a fantastic product, quality service, and on top of that, communicate our challenges with that? Yeah. And that's our responsibility as business owners to do that. Why are we talking about this on the pod? Is like, we're literally saying like, some things are going to be challenging. We're not going to panic. But as consumers, a lot of the folks who are listening to our podcast probably drink our coffee. Like, we're not just trying to make, bleep amount of money here. Right. We're trying to make money, get paid as well, and live a life and provide an amazing product.
Yeah. And yeah, just chill.
Yeah.
I think things will get figured out. As of right now, though, what you can do is go support some Canadian roasters.
Yeah.
I think with the dollar exchange right now, anybody in the U.S. buying a bag of coffee from September, Luna, Subtext, whatever, you're gonna get a pretty solid deal. So,
Yeah.
so go pick up a bag from them. But otherwise,
especially September's coffee needs to rest for like 2 or 3 months anyway.
Right,
like,
right.
You know, you just stock up for like the rest of the year. Like,
Exactly.
buy coffee you want to drink in July.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, friends, thank you for joining us on another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. And as we always say, remember, reflect what's good.